Cool. Okay, so I'm here today with Pablo, and what we're going to look at is what's called Cromáin. A hip throw, or historically was also called a hip lock. Now, a hip throw is a hip throw. You've seen this in other martial arts like judo, like sambo, like Greco-Roman. I'm basically loading Pablo up on my hips and then throwing him forward. Now, the difference between the hip throw or the hip lock in collar and elbow and other martial arts is the hand placement. In judo, in sambo, in Greco-Roman, in MMA, and any other grappling style you can think of, you usually have the freedom to do whatever you want with your hands. So you can go for an underhook, step in, load him up, and drop him. You can go over the head, load him up on your hips, and drop him. You can go for the arm, load him up, and drop him. In collar and elbow, you don't have that kind of freedom. As we have talked about repeatedly now over the course of these videos, collar and elbow is a fixed grip wrestling style. So I have my right hand on the collar, so right hand here on the collar, and left hand on the sleeve. And this is where my hands have to stay. I cannot swim for an underhook. I cannot go over his head. I cannot go for his arm. The instant I release my grip, I forfeit a fall. So what that means is we have to find a way to get our hips in and complete the rotation while maintaining our fixed hold. Now, this is sometimes easier said than done, especially like me, you have the world's stiffest shoulders. If you try and get your hips like all the way in and around a complete 180-degree rotation while maintaining your collar and elbow grips, what you'll sometimes find is you'll get stuck here because your shoulders just don't have the necessary flexibility to complete the rotation that they would if you went for an underhook or over the head, etc., etc. So, in collar and elbow, we're not ultra prescriptive about how a technique has to be done. There's different interpretations of different trips and throws and so on. So what I'm just going to show today is my preferred way of doing a hip throw or a hip lock while maintaining the grips. This is what works for me with my stiff shoulders. If you have flexible shoulders or even normal human shoulders, you might be able to do it a slightly different way. But this is my interpretation of the collar and elbow hip lock. So we're here and we have our grips. Pablo's in a nice neutral stance and I want to go for my hip lock. So we always talk about breaking alignment when we're going for our trips or our other collar and elbow techniques. I want to send his upper body one way and I want to block his lower body from following. Because collar and elbow is a very trip-centric style, I'm usually using my feet to break the alignment. So I'm sending his upper body one way, and I'm using my lower body to break that alignment. I'm doing the same thing with a hip throw. I'm breaking the alignment here. His upper body is coming forward, and I'm preventing his lower body from following. The only difference is, instead of using my foot to do it, I'm using my hip to do it. But the same principles apply. His upper body needs to move in order for this technique to work. It will not work against a static, upright, stable opponent. So the very first thing I want to do, I'm taking a big step in about halfway through his feet. I'm dragging him forward. So his upper body is now moving in this direction. He needs and wants to step forward with his lower body in order to keep his balance. And I'm going to use my hip to lock his lower body in place and then complete the takedown. So big step in, drag him forward. Now this is where stiff shoulders can be a problem. This is where you can find yourself getting stuck and maybe not able to complete the full rotation. So what I like to do is basically cuff him over the back like this. I'm keeping my hand on the collar, so I am maintaining my grip, but I'm sliding it across the back of his neck, basically from one shoulder to the other. So kind of cuffing him across the back of his own neck. And this makes it easier to complete the rotation while maintaining your grips. So, hang on. So, neutral stance. Big step in, pulling him forward, cuffing him over the back of his neck, stepping in, loading him up on my hip. So I'm breaking his alignment. His upper body is coming forward, his lower body wants to follow, but I've locked it in place with my hip. And then to finish, I just rotate my upper body, and Pablo goes down. Nice and easy and fun.
Yes.
Okay? So that's the hip throw from a neutral stance. What you'll often find is that in a live wrestling situation, you have to set it up a bit. Because obviously in a real life wrestling situation, we're not going to be standing here nice and easy and neutral. It'll more typically be right foot on right. Right foot on right is not the best angle for a hip throw. So what you'll find you'll usually have to do is get him to take a step back with his lead foot. So you can fake a trip like an inside hook, boom, now I've got the angle that I need. I pull him forward, I cuff him over the back, I step, and he goes down. Nice, easy hip throw. Try it out. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.